to make a parachute ball. This is a parachute ball, so it is a steam pudding pot and a plastic tablecloth parachute with crochet suspension lines attached in like that, and when it deploys it looks like this. That is a parachute ball, although normally you throw it up in the air and it floats down. So what we're looking at here is how to make a parachute ball like this. Now, parachutes are extremely important in getting missions to land safely on other planets. So if you've been following the Perseverance Mars mission, you will certainly have seen very dramatic footage of the parachute deploying there and landing the Perseverance Mars rover safely on the planet. So parachutes are really important in space science. And what we're going to do is just look at how we can make the parachute using this readily available plastic party tablecloth. This particular one is from Tesco, but other party tablecloths are also available. So what we start with is this template. Now you'll have this with your kit. It's just a triangular piece of card with an arrow on it. Now, in order to make sure that you can create an octagonal 8-sided parachute, I've constructed this template to make it really easy for you, and this is how you go about doing it. So you start with a corner and you place the template so that it matches up with the corner, and where the arrow is, you make a mark, because that's where we're going to start designing our drawing out our parachute. Now I'm using a Sharpie for this because it's the only thing that will show up on the camera. You'll just be able to use a regular biro or pen, and much like my UK Space Agency one here, but you'll have ones provided for you. So I've just marked that using this distance from the furthest corner to the arrow. I'm now moving the template across so that it matches the edge of the party tablecloth, and then I'm going to draw along the edge of the template, repositioning it if it moves. So it being an octagonal shape, how many sides does an octagon have? If you're thinking 8, you've got it right. And so each of these segments will be 1/8 of the parachute, and what I'm doing now is lining the template up with the previous line, and then I'm just drawing around the sections that I haven't already drawn around, like that. And now I'm going to keep going around. I'll do one more like this. This one goes there. And I'm going to keep going, but we're going to speed things up a little bit, so you don't just have to sit there watching me draw around a shape. So off we go. Okay, now that I've drawn 7 of them, the last one, I'm just going to use the edge of my template to join up the last 2 points. So that was my first triangle that I drew, and I've got an empty space here between these 2 points. So I'm just going to join up those 2 points to complete my octagonal 8-sided parachute shape. And the next thing I need to do is cut that out. Now, you'll be provided with a good sharp pair of scissors that have never cut paper, because apparently that's how you keep scissors sharp. So you'll be provided with a good pair of scissors like this on each of your tables, and essentially what you need to do is flatten it out and then cut along one of the lines. Now it's a little bit fiddly, don't worry if you don't quite get it exact, but what you're trying to do is just cut along the outside lines so that what you end up with is an octagonal parachute shape like that. So that's your octagonal parachute shape. Now, the parachute, you may have noticed, has got a vent hole in the middle, Lots of students will say your parachute's rubbish because it's got a hole in it. Actually, all parachutes have vent holes in them, and the idea is that the air can flow through the parachute. If you don't have a vent hole, the thing will billow as the air tries to escape out the sides, and it makes it unstable. So you must have a hole in your parachute. So this is a challenge. How do we cut a nice, neat circular hole in the centre of an octagonal shape? Fortunately, it's dead easy. All you have to do is fold it in half, and in half again, and in half again, and in half again, and you can keep going actually, but that's probably enough. What we have now is this funny triangular shape here, and we just snip the top off to create the vent hole. You can't put it back on, so cutting less off and cutting a bit more off later is probably the wise thing to do, because although you can always take more off, you can't put more back on. And there we have a nice neat hole right in the centre of our octagonal parachute. I'm going to turn it upside down because the next thing that we need to do is create the suspension line. So 40 centimetres is how long the suspension lines need to be, and very simply you take crochet thread and you place it on the 40 centimetre template, and you chop it, and you do that 8 times, and then you end up with a set of suspension lines that you can use for your parachute. So here are our 8 suspension lines. Now the next job is to attach them. Now the way that we're going to do that is we're going to have them radiating out, so going out from the middle all around the parachute. So you need a reasonable sized table to do this. You use a square piece of electrical tape that I've just cut out from there, and to try and make sure that it fits securely and doesn't just keep falling off, what we need to do is take the crochet thread and turn it into a loop. Hopefully you can see that. So all I've done is twisted that round into a loop so that it loops back on itself, and then I take my piece of tape and I attach it so that it comes out at the corner, looking like that. So you can see there's a little loop of it stuck to the tape now, and the end is coming out at the corner. It just helps with creating enough friction to hold that in place. And then what we do is you place the corner so that the suspension line is pointing away from the parachute. And essentially what we do now is repeat that 8 times. So once again, I'm going to be doing the same process of creating a loop. So I twist it round, I place the tape on so that there's a little loop of it stuck to the tape and it's coming out of the corner, and then I move my parachute around so that you can see the next corner, and I place that on so that the suspension line is pointing away from the middle of the parachute, and stick it down. We're going to speed this up now so that you don't have to sit there for ages watching me attaching all these parachute lines, and so we're going to speed this up as I do the remaining 6 suspension lines. Okay, so now what I've got is my suspension lines are all attached to the corners of the parachute, and then when you're pulling them together, what you do is you do the opposite sides. So I've just picked opposite sides. The lines that you've drawn on your parachute should help you with that. So you just pick up opposite sides and hold them together in the middle. Opposite sides and hold them together in the middle. If you drop them, just start again. Hopefully I won't have to do that, but it sometimes does happen. Here we go, opposite sides, and the last one in there. And there's my suspension lines. So the next thing that I need to do with this is I've got my suspension lines all lined up nice and neatly there, and what I need to do is you can twist them and just tie them in a knot. So you make a loop and pull the threads through and tie a knot. Your parachute will then deploy like that. Last thing that we need to do is to look at the steamed pudding pot. So here is the steamed pudding pot, and hopefully what you can see inside there is a small bit of hot glue that's been put in there in a set, and a little tiny plastic ring that looks like that. And it's that we're attaching the parachute to. Now this is a little bit fiddly, but your fingers are smaller than mine, and so you should find this a lot easier than I do, because I find this quite a challenge. So I've got to thread that through there and tie it into a knot, which goes something like that. So I've just threaded it through, and now what I'm going to do is have a bit of a fight with it while I get it to tie in a knot. When I've done that, our parachute ball will be complete. It is a bit of a fiddle. You can secure it more by getting a second knot in there, but essentially that's your parachute ball. You can experiment with longer suspension lines, but that is a completed parachute ball. The last thing that we need to talk about is packing your parachute. So the parachute is now constructed and it's attached to the parachute ball. So first of all, fold your parachute in half and then continue to fold it in on itself, so you end up with something that looks a little bit like that. So we just keep folding it in, and then after that what you want to do is concertina it. So a bit like a fan, you just keep bending it in. The idea is that when you let it go, it will spring open, because you want, when you let this thing go, when you've thrown it up in the air, you want it to spring. So you fold one way and the other, and then place it inside the parachute ball. And then when it's ready, you would throw it up in the air, the parachute would deploy, and it would float gently down to the ground. And that's how you make a parachute ball. Over to you to build your own.